Across your client portfolio, where do you see the strongest demand for agentic AI in finance? What business triggers are driving the shift towards autonomy and agility?
With respect to what we are seeing in finance, I'll talk about three broad areas where people are finding value and where there's a lot of demand. The first one is really about the entire area of what I would call as controllership, right? Which includes the entire accounting, close, as well as the controllership function. The second area is what I would call as the financial planning and analysis space, right from how the annual operating plans are made to how these get executed, how your performance reporting is done, how your business analysis to also drive what I would call as both strategic as well as tactical decisions, etc. The third space, I believe, is more of the operations part of finance, where you have the core processes that I think people talked about, which is your P2P, O2C as well, where you have a lot of talent today spending a lot of time in doing transactions, and because of that, there's a very strong productivity business case that gets created, and a lot of value generation happens, right? Some of the trends that are driving these areas is when I look at controllership, for example, it's been a challenge for finance professionals to really ensure that when you're closing your books, for example, am I doing it with quality? Am I taking care of everything? For example, I mean, is everything captured correctly? Am I reporting the numbers in a correct way, right? And it's been a challenge for finance professionals to ensure that. It takes a lot of hard work to drive that, right? Which is where we've seen that some of these systems, for example, will really go and look at, let's say, what I would call as anomalies at a transaction layer level. They will look at different validations, a lot of reconciliations you can look at as a use case, when looking at this particular area. So there's a lot of value in terms of processes being very transactional and how a business case really gets created. The second one around FP&A, earlier we used to have dashboards, etc., that people used to use for reporting. Now essentially in the AI, agentic AI world, you can essentially talk to your data, right? You expose your data and you can start having conversations with your data, and your static reports, etc., are, even though people still have them, but I think a lot of people are moving towards information available at the click of a button, right? And by just writing prompts, which is where when it comes to, let's say, ad hoc data points which used to take up a lot of time, etc., now they're available for people just to look at. You don't have to go to anyone and then ask for it, which is driving value at multiple levels for senior management, middle management, as well as junior management to kind of get that access. The third part is, I think what Veena also highlighted is it is a digital workforce. When you look at scaling up your organization, I think there's, ample room for, adding agents to your workforce so that, scaling up doesn't become a challenge. Talent is a constraint. Even, sitting in India as a market, if I'm saying talent is a challenge, it's difficult to get the right set of people to do, let's say, knowledge-driven work. Which is where AI agents, I think, I mean, given certain guardrails, controls, etc., they're a boon, I think, when it comes to scaling up. I'll probably limit it to that.
What are the biggest operational barriers that companies face when scaling agentic AI across finance, and how do you help them overcome these challenges?
Agentic AI, for example, we are talking about so much of promise, right? And still, there are challenges with respect to scaling up this whole, sort of including AI agents into our setups, right? Uh, the first challenge really starts with companies being data ready, right? We talked about all sorts of good things that the agents do, but we also highlighted this. It doesn't work without data. And when you go into actually doing transformational work and deploying agents, you understand that the underlying data, for example, becomes a challenge, right? So one thing that we do, for example, to address that is agents that are able to pull data, that are able to some extent, validate data. You build, certain other guardrails and memory as a self-learning mechanism to say that, tomorrow if I find this exception at a data layer level, how do I correct it? So that over a period of time, the agent takes that into action, and then the whole concept of self-learning becomes, sort of more evident. The second challenge, for example, when we do these deployments, it's a very stark, sort of a different world. When you look at very traditional sort of transformational exercises that we used to do versus now. We used to work on things like SOPs and process documents and process narratives. The point is that it captures what good looks like, right? But there is a lot of other, inherent knowledge, information, which is more tribal in nature, which does not get captured. And because that intelligence earlier was applied by humans, you did not need to capture it. What you were capturing, you will deploy in a system, in an ERP, in any other system, which is, let's say, lesser intelligent. And that intelligence comes from a human. Now, if you want your agents to be intelligent about this stuff, right, you need to find out a way to capture the tribal information into a document which can then be fed to an agent, which can then read it and then apply yourself accordingly. So the first step to address that is to capture that, I think, pretty well, and which is what we are also trying to do. The third thing, I would say is what everyone has talked about, but I'll just summarize it. I think one of the core challenges has been, you've built a beautiful system, but people still don't use it. Why do people not use it? Because for people to understand and adopt, and then sort of also, what Akshay talked about from an operating model perspective, how do I create an operating model where people are very clear with respect to what value it is generating for you, how it can be, sort of helpful to you in your day-to-day work, etc. And getting them to use those systems, I think, has also been a critical challenge when it comes to scaling up, right? So I'll probably limit it to that. But there's a lot of work that goes on to say that, how do you really drive adoption? How do you really train people to get to a level where they become decision makers, orchestrators of systems? It's a transition that people also have to make in their own sort of careers. Right, so I'll probably just stop it at that, and then I think there are a number of other challenges also that come, but I think these are the top ones.
So the question is, if you had to pick one finance process where agentic AI will have the biggest impact in the next 24 months, which one do you think it is and why?
What we call out as reconciliations, from a finance perspective, but I think reconciliations, wherever you have two different systems, two different sources of data, you have a case for reconciliation, and that is where I would probably want to see, people not spend time at all. I think, yeah.